Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This is video number 3 of a 4-part series for the engine rebuild on an 8N, 9N, or 2N Ford. In this video, I'll start out with some explanation of different valve train kits that you can put in your tractor. Then I'll show you the installation and adjustment process for your valves. N-Series Ford tractors came with 3 different styles of valve train kits. I'll talk about the 3 different styles that could be in your tractor first. One style on very early tractors would have a mushroom style valve, and the guide would be 2-piece. That kind of kit is obsolete, so if you take that out of your tractor, you can't put the same kind back in. You'll want to update to one of the newer style valve train kits. The other 2 styles are what we call rotating or non-rotating exhaust valves. Now, the type of kit that you take out of your tractor doesn't matter so much as choosing what kit you want to put in your tractor, because any N-Series blocks will accept either of the valve train kits that we offer. However, I'm going to talk about the differences between the 2 kits so that you can make a really good choice as to what's going to be the best choice for you. This kit in front of me here is what we call a rotating valve train kit. That means that the exhaust valves rotate. It also means that the exhaust valves need a cap like this to go onto the top of the exhaust valves only. These caps are sold separately from the kit. Because the exhaust valves rotate, the idea with this kit is that when they rotate around, it prevents hot spots on the valves, and it also prevents carbon buildup. So maybe this kit would have more longevity than the standard valve train kit that we offer. However, I have not done a test to see how many hours each will perform for, but if you think about it, this valve train kit should last longer. The downside to this kit is that it is harder to install. The keepers are 2 different styles, so you got to know which keeper to put onto your exhaust and intake valves, which makes it a little bit more difficult. It's got the cap involved. If you are very mechanically inclined, installing this kit will be no problem for you, and it would be a really good choice for you. Also with this kit, you do get new caps for the top of your valve stem, as opposed to this standard kit where you reuse that cap. The keepers on this standard kit are all the same, so you don't have to deal with 2 different styles. In my opinion, this kit is a lot easier to install. So if you are new to mechanical things, this would be probably a better choice for you because it's a little bit easier to get into the tractor. I mentioned longevity on the more premium valve train kit, but don't misunderstand me. This kit is still an excellent kit choice. This is the kit that was offered in Ford tractors originally from past the mushroom style until 1951 when this rotating kit came out. So I wouldn't sell this kit to you if it wasn't a good kit. Don't misunderstand me when I use the longevity term over here. This is still an excellent choice for you. It's just easier to install. It is a little bit more affordable, but the price is really quite close on these kits. So it doesn't matter to me which one you choose. With that information, you can pick whichever kit you want. I will show you how to put both styles of valves in. Don't be confused though. I'm going to put both styles in my tractor. After the video, I'm going to go back and make it all match. You want to have one type of valve train kit throughout your whole entire engine. I'm just putting 2 styles in for demonstration so that you know how to put either style in. Now that I've talked about what style you are going to want, we're going to just show you how to put these valve train kits into the block. There are a couple steps you'll want to do before you install your new valve train kit. The first is to prepare the bore and the place where the guide goes in the block. You can use a hone like this one on a drill and clean out any remaining carbon that is in the bore here. Cleanliness is still our ticket to success. Once you have that clean, then you need to prepare the seat. I like to use an old guide like this one, and I'm going to set it in there, and then I'll just drive it in with a brass bar. You see how far I've gone. That looks good. Then there are 2 choices for preparing the seat. One is an electric machine like this one that would clear out the seat. This is a more professional grade tool. If you have it, then use it, and you probably know how to use it if you have one. If this is something that you are going to purchase a tool to perform the step, then a valve seat grinding tool like this one is going to be a much more affordable choice. This kit comes in a plastic toolbox, and it has different sizes for whatever angle of guide you want to use. And the tips on here are carbide so that it cuts the steel. When you set that in there, you can just slide this around until your seat is cleaned up. Sometimes these seats will have little pits or sometimes even a groove, and that is what we're trying to remove so that when we put our new valves in, they're going to seat well. I neglected to tell you that the reason why I put the guide in there was so that I can get this tool right into the center of my seat here. I don't want to grind that off center. That's why the guide is in there. Once I have that cleaned up, I'll drive the guide out and use it all along the rest of the block. The next step is to use some lapping compound onto your valves. This is just another way to prepare that seat again. This lapping compound is kind of like liquid sandpaper. It says silicon carbide grease mix is a technical name for it, also known as lapping compound. I have it on the edge of my valve here. My guide is still in there. I'm going to drive that in so that it's set just like that. Then I use my little suction cup tool to grab onto the valve, and then I can just move it back and forth like this until I'm satisfied with the result. Let's pull that out and take a look at it. You want to make sure that that shininess is all gone and that lapping compound is wiped off of there. That looks pretty good to me. This is a tedious step, but it's really important. If you do not have the tools to do these steps, don't skip them. Instead, you could take your block to a machine shop and they would be able to install the valve train kit for you and prepare it properly. So keep that in mind if you need that option as well. If you do use that option, you can buy the valve train kit from us and take the machine shop, both the kit and the block together, and they will assemble it for you. My dad is drilling a hole into the block where the lifter goes. Normally, or originally I should say, these tractors would come with a solid lifter like this one. In order to get the correct gap, you'd have to take your lifter and grind off the top until you got to the proper adjustment. This is not a good design, so the new design is to do an adjustable lifter like this one. You can see the top here is threaded, which allows you to adjust the lifter so that you can easily make your proper gap when you set your valves. These adjustable lifters have this groove in here which matches up to this hole. In my experience, the majority of 8M blocks have already been drilled and have a hole like this for the adjustable lifters. I'm glad though that I found this block that didn't have the hole already, so that if you run into that, you'll know that it's okay, it doesn't hurt the block at all, to drill a little hole right through there. It doesn't matter what size you drill, just a small hole, because then you're going to put a punch in here. When the lifter is in here, the punch through the hole is going to allow you to grab onto the lifter so that when you turn it up here, the lifter is holding still and only the adjustment is being made to the top. That's the whole concept here. When you have your new lifters, you can spray them, don't put them in dry, and then they'll drop into the bore. Now you do have to get it exactly straight to work it in there. Do not use a hammer. If it's going in hard, just work with it and drop all your lifters in all the way down the line.
There's lots of tools to use to put this together. Ford did have a lot of cool tools to use that, so we're going to try to show you how to do it by hand, in case you don't have a lot of those tools. The valve, this is the exhaust valve. The exhaust is the smaller one, intake's the large one. The guides are the same on intake and exhaust. Put that on first. Rachel's going to drop down the spring.
The cap, which you get new if you chose the rotator kit, which is what we're demonstrating first here.
And normally you can use the machine to squeeze these down, but they're not that hard. You can do them by hand. I'm just going to squeeze it down by hand.
This exhaust valve, you're going to use the clip that looks like the crescent, the half circle, I guess is what would be a better term for it. So I just drop those right into the hole, and then as you release the spring, they will come up.
And you can see they're up there. And now there's room for the cap to be put on top. The rotor cap, we're going to put that on later. When we drop it in the hole, the cap will go right on top like that. So we're going to put that on later so we don't lose it right now. And then the other thing you got to do is you got to push this forward and keep tension on them keepers. So that's the whole assembly right there. Now this is the exhaust they do not get a seal. The exhaust, you only get 4 seals in the kit, and they go on the intake. The exhausts get too hot. Now, I'm going to put these in the block. I'm just going to show you on the outside like this. And then we got a little keeper that goes up in the block. You can see we got this one assembled for you. And this keeper rides in up against the bottom of the block, and it goes in this groove right here. And it fits tight and then drops into the block. It'll be up there like that. So that's what me and Rachel are going to try to accomplish right now. And to do that, another tool that we made so that you can make this at home, this is just a regular screwdriver. And I took and ground with my grinder, I ground this section out. So if you look, I ground this all off here. It was a regular blade screwdriver, kind of a thick shaft one because you're going to pry on it. And I'll stick that through the hole, and I'll grab this right here on top and push down. And that'll allow Rachel to get that clip in there. And then when she gets a clip in there, I can let it up and the spring will push the guide back up. So that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to work here. We don't want to be in the way of the camera. We're trying to explain it first. The other thing that I did is, again, Rachel said that success here is clean. This is another larger hone. Stick right down the hole, and we just clean that hole right out because we got to get that as clean as we can get it to get this guide back in there. There's a lot of carbon in these. And then we're going to spray it with a little bit of lube, and it makes it as slippery as we can get it. And now we're going to try to get this all assembled. So here it goes. Put it in as straight as you can. Give it a wiggle. Rachel's going to put the cap underneath there, and she got the cap under, and it's in. And if you look in the hole, it's actually gaining on where we want it. I'm going to take my special tool that we made, and we'll push it down. Oh, Rachel, I can barely see it. There it goes. And
oh, there we go.
Rachel got it in because of the angle on this, and I'm going to let it up, and you can see the spring pushes it back up, and now you can't get that keeper out. If you can get it out, you haven't got it right. So now you can't get it out. By this screwdriver having that edge cut, it goes in top of there, pushes down on the top of the guide, allows it to push down, you get your clip in, and then this angle will allow it to come back out. And that's how easy it is to assemble without any special tools. Ford did a great job of making this easy for you to work on.
Now I'll demonstrate an intake valve. So intakes have seals on them, which my dad's going to stretch over. The seal goes onto the guide on intake valves only, and this process is the same whether you choose a rotating kit or a non-rotating kit. You got to stretch the seal over, and then once you have it in the groove, it's important to make sure that it's not twisted. Sometimes when you slide it over, it can get twisted on there. And
that's what I did. I twisted it. So now I made sure that all the way around here it's flat, so I don't have it twisted. If you have to, you can take a small screwdriver and just straighten it out. So I've got it straightened out. Okay. So now we're going to assemble it just like we did the other one without the valve machine. We're going to do this by hand. So the guide goes on first.
Then we have the spring. Now in our hands here is a non-rotator. This one was a rotating valve. This is a non-rotating valve, so we're going to reuse this cap. He's going to slide that down here, and then these keepers are a slightly different style. They're smaller on this end, and the smaller end is going to go down. I've got the larger end up towards me, and then there's a groove inside the keeper. That groove matches the groove that's inside the valve.
All right, so I'm going to really have to push on at this one for you, Rachel.
Slide that in there.
Got it.
Just like that, and then you release the spring and just make sure that it's secure. It's actually held in this snug. It's actually
in the groove, and this cap sticks out a little more than the other one does because this is a non-rotator, and this actually hits right on top of our adjusting on our lifter. So now we've got the seal on, same thing, just the same thing as we did last time. I'm going to push this down a little bit to free it up, make sure that it works. We're going to spray some lube on it, Rachel. Go ahead and spray some down and make it as slippery as we can make it. We're going to do the same thing to our groove. We're going to make sure that it's super clean and get it as smooth as we can. That just helps break any little bit of dirt that's left there. We'd already done this once, but I wanted to show that we had cleaned that. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to drop it in the hole. I'm going to wiggle it down as far as I can in there, and now we've got to get that clip in, so we're going to use that special screwdriver that we cut. You know what, Rachel? I'm kind of at a bad angle here. I'm going to let you, and we're going to trade jobs. See if you can get on top of that, and you pull it down, and I'll put the clip in. There you go.
Is that enough?
No, you're not on it because it didn't move. You got to get that groove on it. I wasn't planning on the camera angle here, but there you go. There you go. Just a little more if you can, Rachel.
No, I'm reached out.
Bottomed out?
Yeah.
All right,
I can remove and try again.
Yep, remove and try again. You are so close. I just got to have a little bit more.
There you go.
Yep.
Nope, I can see it.
You can see it from there?
Yep.
All right, up higher. There you go. Oh, we are so close. It's really a close task here to get this in. You are there, Rachel. Let me take a hammer and tap it in. We're just gonna, I think it's going. Slowly but surely here.
There we go.
All right, we are so close. You gotta make sure it gets all the way in, and it is. Okay, so we've got it all the way in, and our tabs are here, and as soon as Rachel lets off, the spring pulls it up tight, and there we go. There's a non-rotator and a rotator.
Now we are ready to adjust the valves. We are going to adjust the valves on this tractor actually twice. We're gonna do one adjustment right now, and then after the tractor's run for a while, this is something that we will double check in the future. But to start with, we're gonna do a valve adjustment right now. You are going to do a valve adjustment 4 different times, 1, 2, 3, 4 cylinders, each cylinder at a time. You'll do both the intake and the exhaust stroke for the cylinder when the cylinder is on the power stroke. So my dad is going to turn the engine here. I want you to notice that there's resistance in the way that he turns the engine, but he's not overbearing. If you have to put a huge bar onto your wrench in order to turn your engine, you've done something wrong in the assembly process and you need to go back. Maybe a bearing's too tight or something like that. So there's resistance, but not too much. So let me explain to you what a power stroke is. Right now, you can see that for cylinder number 2, one of my valves is up. Then the piston comes up. This is the exhaust stroke. Now when he turns it again, we're going to see the intake valve come up. The piston's down at the bottom because number 1 and 4 pistons just came up. Now piston number 2, the piston is on its way up and both of my valves are down. That is the power stroke. Notice that that piston came up twice, once on the exhaust stroke and once on the power stroke, and you only make the valve adjustment when it's on the power stroke. Both valves are down and the piston is up. So at this time, at this position of the engine, I can only make my adjustment to cylinder number 2. So you do a different adjustment for each of the valves. Your exhaust valves are 14 thousandths and your intake valves are 12 thousandths. I have a punch in my hand. Oh, you got one too. So remember we said to put the punch in there to hold on to the lifter, and then you need a 7/16" wrench to move the bolt at the bottom, and you're gonna put your feeler gauge in there and see how it is. If it's too loose or too tight, then you just move that nut or bolt there at the bottom, one way or the other way, depending on if you need to tighten or loosen, until you get comfortable with that 14 thousandths gap. Then we're gonna switch to a 12 thousandths gauge for my intake valves. This gap, 12 or 14 thousandths, is the same no matter what valve kit you chose. You can see here that I have way too much gap. See how my feeler gauge moves up and down? So he's gonna go ahead and tighten up the lifter there. There is a thin valve type wrench. You can buy a specialty tool for this job. We're using a regular wrench because we want to show you this job can be done with regular tools. But if you have a wrench for this job, you could certainly use it. Let's test that. There's still way too much gap there, so.
And I want to talk about the drilling this hole. Will you talk about that while I'm adjusting this?
Yes, okay. So one common pitfall is with these lifters, you got to notice that your groove is only so tall. Some people will drill a hole and they'll either put it too low or too high so that when they put their punch in, they are trying to grab onto the lifter down here or up there. So make sure that when you drill your hole, kind of hold up your lifter in there and see where it needs to be so that your punch can actually grab onto it.
Try that.
Oh, that's perfect, way better. Okay, so that's the 12 thousandths there. So now I would make my rotation and get to the power stroke on, I've already done one. I normally do cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're gonna find power stroke for number 3 and 4 and adjust those valves in the same way. I put a little bit of liquid gasket sealant behind my gaskets, and then I'm ready to put both of my side doors on. I will give you one caution, is that if you get your doors on just slightly crooked like that, then when you go to put your exhaust manifold on, your manifold won't attach because these will be in the way. So make sure that you get them on exactly straight. On our last take, when we were doing those valve lifters, my dad was struggling a little bit to get that one tight. It's not because he is wimpy, it's just because those are very, very tight. Every once in a while I'll have somebody tell me that their lifters were seized, and I'm not sure that they're really seized. I think they just turn that tight, and maybe sometimes people don't realize how hard that turns. It's a jam nut that needs to stay tight while the engine is running, so that's why it turns so tight. So you have to hold the punch in and turn the wrench at the same time. It takes lots of pressure to get it adjusted, but it's a very important step, so make sure that you get both of your valves adjusted to the 12 and 14 thousandths. Now that our valves are complete, we are ready to continue on with this engine rebuild process. So go ahead and watch for video number 4. It's the final one in the series.